How do we hit the mark with God and leave a legacy that outlasts us? We hear people talk about that a lot. How do you create a legacy? How do you leave a legacy? How do you have something continue after you're gone? Well, David is going to show us today in First Chronicles 27 through 29 that he understood the principle of leaving a legacy. I've heard it said that leaving a legacy is like planting trees that you'll never be able to enjoy the shade of. You're doing it for other people. And David knew his job, by the way, and every job matters to God, and every job does lend itself toward the future legacy of your life. So in chapter 27 of First Chronicles, the first thing David knew was his job was to conquer the land, eradicate the enemies of God, and secure the kingdom of Israel. It says in chapter 27, verse 1, "This is the number of the people of Israel, the heads of fathers' houses, the commanders of thousands and hundreds, and their officers who served the king in all matters concerning the divisions that came and went, month after month throughout the year, each division numbering 24,000. So the first thing David did was he secured the land, conquered his enemies, and set up a military to protect the land of Israel. But there's a problem with that. That left David with blood on his hands. In other words, David was a man of war. And God wanted the temple to be built by a man of peace. And so now David knew that he'd have to secure a legacy for the next generation to build a temple, but it didn't mean he couldn't prepare them for how to do it. Because it goes on in verse 8 that David now sets in place a plan to secure the kingdom for his son, Solomon. Verse 8, "Now therefore in the sight of all Israel, the assembly of the Lord, and in the hearing of our God, observe and seek out all the commands of our Lord your God, that you may possess this good land and leave it for inheritance to your children after you forever." So he knew that God had secured for him that he had to put Solomon on the throne and make sure Solomon had everything he needed in order to succeed. So already David was looking past his life, past his victories, and even though he desired God to be in a house that he could worship instead of a temporary tent that they set up and tore down, he knew that the first thing for his legacy to come to pass was to have a son to carry it on, or a king, or a leader to carry it on. So legacy for David is securing a leadership position for the next generation. But then he goes on further, and now he starts to put together an infrastructure for this next generation temple where God will reside. It says in 28, 11, and 12, David puts together plans for the temple. Then David gave Solomon his son the plan of the vestibule of the temple and of its houses, its treasuries, its upper rooms, its inner chambers, and the room of the mercy seat, and the plans of all that he had in mind for the courts of the house of the Lord. So David spent all this time and effort and hired the architects and the engineers to draw plans for a temple he would never see built. It's like planting a seed for a tree that you will not see grow to provide shade for someone in the future. My wife and I, right now, just returned from the Foursquare International Convention in Orlando, Florida, and we felt like one of the things God wanted us to do was to plant 3 willow trees in our front yard. You see, both my son and my daughter were married in my front yard, and now we want our grandchildren to be married one day in our front yard. So we are preparing willow trees. So one day, hopefully, our grandchildren can be married under those willow trees in our front yard. Whether we're here to see that or not is in God's hand. But either way, we're going to plant this little willow tree grove so there'll be shade for our grandchildren when they're married. David's putting the temple plans together, all that work, so Solomon has something to work on when he becomes king. After the plans, it says he set up also the finances for the temple. Very important, money. Are we creating a legacy with our money? 1 Chronicles 29, verse 2. "So I have provided for the house of my God, so far as I was able, the gold for the things of gold, the silver for the things of silver, the bronze for the things of bronze, the iron for the things of iron, the wood for the things of wood, besides great quantities of onyx and stones for setting, colored stones, precious stones, marble, gold, silver." he put together the finances that he would never be able to use for the next generation to be able to build this mighty temple. David understood that creating a legacy was looking at all the pieces, its family, its finances, its future, right? All the plans. He understood the process of creating a legacy for the next generation. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we truly understand our call in God's kingdom? We live on this earth. We will be in the presence of God one day. So we have a job to do here, and we have a job to do preparing for the people that will come after us when we're not here, when we're standing in the presence of God. When we have the joy of being in the presence of Jesus, someone will still be behind. Are we leaving them everything they need to be successful? Are we providing for them all that they need so that they can build the legacy that God has that we began through us? Are we laying a foundation filled with the right place, the right provision, the right people, the right plans? Are we in our life laying a foundation for others so that when we're gone they can carry on, or is it all about ourselves? I think today we see that we are an impatient society. Everybody wants to be pleased now. Everybody wants their pleasure now. Everybody wants their answer today. But David knew his job was to conquer a land and eradicate the enemies of God, set up a kingdom for someone to come rule. And that someone was to be his son. And then he was to set in motion plans and people to be able to put together that temple, and then all the material and the provision, the finances to make it happen. So my question is, what is your legacy? What is that God asks you to do today? What is he asking you to do to prepare for the future? And how are you preparing for it? What areas of your life, people or plans or provision, have you let kind of drop to the side? What things is God calling you to that he wants you to pick up again and prepare them for those that will be here when you are gone? What trees are you planting whose shade you will never enjoy? Well, I hope you enjoyed today's 747. If you did, hit the like button, and then we'll see you tomorrow morning at 747. Love you all. See you then.